Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have my Game Week 32 transfer plans and early thoughts. If you enjoyed today's video, please do smash that like button, and if you're new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, I'm recording this directly after the Manchester United versus Manchester City snooze fest, and that was one of the worst games of football I've watched in a long time, and I watched pretty much every Man United game this season, so that is saying something. But yeah, it wasn't a good game to watch, and for my FPL team, wasn't fantastic for points either. But obviously what this does mean is that I'm recording this before the Monday night game, and quite often I only have like one player in the Monday night game, or usually, because it always seems to be sort of West Ham versus another team lower down in the table, I never seem to have any players on a Monday night. But this Monday night is extremely important for me because I have three players in action in Burn, Murphy, and Isak. And Isak is also my captain. I took the risk, given that he's flagged, to still give him the armband. And to be honest, it can't really go massively wrong now. Famous last words. Even if he gets 1 point, Salah only got 2. Marmoush only got 2. All of the other players that I would have likely captained instead didn't haul. And even the players that I didn't own, that other people captained, like Cole Palmer, also didn't do particularly well. And honestly, this was a bit of a horror week. All of the premium assets doing very, very poorly. And FPL over the last couple of weeks has been pretty rubbish. We were all so excited to wildcard in Game Week 30. And at least over the last 2 game weeks, when I've looked at everyone's teams, my team included, it looked brilliant. Like, I keep looking at it thinking, how am I going to get a red arrow this week? Now, I am on a small red arrow, just over 1,000 places. But with those 3 still to play in captain, I'm hoping that that can become a green arrow. But in terms of the only 3 players that returned for me, it was 2 of my defenders. Gvardiol, as of right now, straight after the game, is on for 3 bonus points. So he's on a 9-pointer, which is great for my FPL team, not great for Manchester United. And also Munoz got that goal. We've been speaking about how attacking Munoz is. Lots of people recently, though, have been going for Henderson instead, and I quite liked it because unless Munoz does go and get a goal or an assist, Henderson will likely outscore him most weeks because Munoz doesn't get bonus and Henderson makes loads of saves. But obviously, when the goal does come, especially when they concede, that is quite a big swing. So an 8-pointer for Munoz, and then Mateta got on the score sheet as well, which was nice. It's his first goal since returning back from that absolutely horrid injury, so nice to see him back on the score sheet. So yeah, great to get a 9, 8, and 8 from those 3. But outside of that, super disappointing. Marmoush really didn't do very much in that game at all. And actually, I saw a stat on Sky Sports. That is the 3rd lowest XG that a Man City team has accumulated in the Premier League under Pep Guardiola. The 3rd lowest XG against a Manchester United defence, which is the 5th worst in the Premier League this season. They are really, really struggling. And maybe that Leicester game, where Marmoush looked great and they were creating chances, maybe that slightly skewed our opinions in the wrong direction, considering it is Leicester. Maybe we got a little bit over-optimistic about how good City might be coming up. So the big elephant in the room is the absolutely stinking choice of including Saka and Foden on my wildcard. The saving grace is that the alternative option was something like Kluivert and Palmer. Kluivert's not played in either week. Palmer was very randomly benched and only got a 1-pointer. And last week, Saka outscored Palmer as well. And also last week I got the auto sub getting Murphy on for Foden. So while Saka and Foden have been absolute horror choices on the wildcard, the alternative options haven't necessarily done significantly better. As I said, I just massively called their expected minutes wrong. I thought Saka would get 60 minutes in Game Week 31. He was on the bench once again. And I thought Foden would start, which he did, but he came off in the 57th minute. Apparently, he was seen limping down the tunnel, and there was a heavy challenge from Casemiro in the first half, which made Foden twist his ankle. So I do wonder if Foden might have got more than 57 minutes, but that injury might have been playing on his mind. Because before the injury, Foden looked quite sharp, and then as soon as that tackle went in, he struggled to get into the game at all. But regardless, yeah, absolutely horrible picks. But the thing is with City attackers, everyone was like, oh, this is why you should have gone for Savinho. And then Savinho goes and gets benched. So I just think it's very difficult to predict outside of like Marmoush and Gvardiol who is going to start for Manchester City. And I think what this week in particular has shown is how difficult it is to predict minutes at the back end of the season when different teams are playing for different things, but also around Europe. The heavy rotation came with Aston Villa. They made 7 or 8 changes to their starting 11. Ezri Konsa was on the bench. That shows you how much rotation there was. Chelsea, they've got I think they're playing in Poland on Thursday, but they've got the Europa Conference League tie coming up. Cole Palmer on the bench. Colwell on the bench. So much rotation there. We see the same with Arsenal. Saka, Ødegaard, Partey, Timber, all on the bench, Martinelli. Maybe we are underestimating just how much rotation there are going to be for the European teams. The issue is Arsenal and Aston Villa are two of the teams you want to heavily invest in ahead of that double game week, and they are going to be in Europe in and around 32, 33. So it is going to make it very difficult over the next couple of weeks to predict where that rotation might come from. But I think this week, if you'd have told me I can come away with a small red or what could be potentially a decent sized green, I probably would have taken it because I wasn't that optimistic about the way the team would look. But I can't really judge how well my game week's gone, considering that three of my biggest differentials are yet to play in Isak Captain, Murphy, and Dan Burn. So we can all laugh at me when all three of them blank on Monday evening, but if all three of them, or at least a couple of them, do very well, it might be a decent sized green. We might be starting to approach the top 10k. Just on my season and what I'm hoping for across the next 7 or 8 game weeks, I do really want to try and push for the top 10k. I need it to go big over the next couple of weeks. I need game week 32 and 33 to go pretty big, and my free hit in 34. If by game week 34 I'm not within touching distance or inside the top 10k, I'll probably reassess my aim and just maybe aim to consolidate top 25k. Or my rank last season, I believe, was 29k, my overall rank to finish with. And the seasons before that, it was 10k and 35. So I've gone 35, 10, 29. Maybe I just aim to finish better than last season, so inside the top 29k. Let me know what your goals are for the season. A lot of rambling there just to say it was an okay game week. Not many people returned for me, but not many people returned in general. Let's now move on to game week 32 and discuss my early thoughts and transfer plans. So looking ahead to game week 32, of course, these are always just my early thoughts and transfer plans. I can update these throughout the week, and there'll be plenty more videos throughout the week. And I should note, if you're watching this right now and you've never subscribed to my channel, maybe you've never even seen one of my videos before, if you're enjoying this video and you want to see more content, please do consider subscribing. I've set the goal for 150,000 subscribers by the end of the season, and I'm about 1,500 away. So I would really appreciate anyone subscribing and also dropping a like on the video as well. But yes, there'll be more content throughout the week. So these are just my early thoughts. I currently have 0 in the bank and 2 free transfers. So I never like having 0 in the bank because it means you obviously can't upgrade with a single transfer. But given that I now have 2 free transfers, it leaves me a little bit more flexible. In terms of my overall strategy, just to remind you, or if you are new around here, I am looking to bench boost in game week 33. So in the biggest double of the season, so next week. Not next week, the week after game week 32, of course. And then in game week 34, I'm looking to free hit. So bench boost 33, free hit 34. The reason for that is I've wildcarded into a team which has loads of players that double in 33. But of course, those players that double in 33, such as Munoz, Sarr, Mateta, Saka, etc., they will all blank in game week 34. So I need to free hit to deal with that. So that is the overall plan. And therefore, because I am looking to bench boost in 33, in an ideal world, I want to roll my transfers up to that double, but I could be in a position potentially this week where I might need to use a transfer, as we will discuss. The only final thing to note, other than, of course, my general strategy, is the European games midweek in between 32 and 33, but also in between 31 and 32. So this midweek coming, there are European games. And then after game week 32, before the big double, there are the second legs of those European games. So sandwiched either side of 32, the likes of Morgan Rogers, Konsa, Saka, all of these players that we own, they are going to be playing in Europe. And especially for Aston Villa and Arsenal, they are big games. Aston Villa against PSG, Arsenal against Real Madrid. So it's very easy to make a plan and think you can stick to it, but all you need is 1 or 2 injuries, and that plan is thrown up in the air. So we need to wait and see. Do not make early transfers at the moment. European football, players coming towards the end of the season as well. Injuries are even more common at this stage because their muscles are so overloaded. We need to wait and see what happens in Europe. So there are some more general things that I'm thinking about outside of my players, but let's look at the team then. It actually looks pretty well set up. So again, the 2 teams that double this week are Newcastle and Crystal Palace. I've organised it in a nice little aesthetic way here, but you can see along the left-hand side, I have Burn, Murphy, Isak. They are my 3 Newcastle players. And then along the right-hand side, you can see Munoz, Sarr and Mateta. So as of right now, I have my 6 Newcastle and Palace players covered. So if you're in that position where you've got 5 or 6 from those 2 teams, great. It might feel like everyone's got 6 players from Newcastle and Palace. I can promise you, even in those top ranks, it is not as common as you would think for players to already have most of their doublers sorted. It might be in the small bubble of sort of content creators and YouTube, but generally, a lot of people who've wildcarded early or haven't quite been able to plan in the same way. So it's a good position to be in. Obviously, I've not seen the Newcastle game. The concern would be an injury to Murphy or Dan Burn, or the Isak injury is worse than we first feared, and actually he is a doubt. If any of those players are a doubt, that makes it a little bit tricky because I might have to use a transfer there. But let me go on the basis that they aren't. The only other concern would, of course, be Dan Burn being on 8 yellows. If he gets booked on Monday and also gets booked against Manchester United, he would miss Crystal Palace and Villa. Him missing game week 33 isn't an issue because I plan on selling him, but him missing one of the games in the double would be a big concern. So if he does get booked against Leicester, all eyes on that United game that hopefully he doesn't get booked there. If he gets booked against Crystal Palace and misses 33 and 34, I don't mind because I'm going to sell him for 33, and even if I don't, then it means I've delayed the bench boost, but then I'm also free hitting for 34. So basically, I just need Dan Burn to not get booked in 2 consecutive games. So yeah, let's go on the basis that nothing bad happens, fingers crossed, with our Newcastle and Palace assets. We've got our 6 sorted there. And so really, we're just looking at the other 5 spots in the team. David Raya is absolutely fine. I've got Areola on the bench for this week against Liverpool, so there is no massive decision to be made there. I know there is a lot of talk about Arsenal being weaker without Gabriel, and generally I do expect them to be weaker. And also with the Real Madrid's ties either side of game week 32, I am expecting them to struggle a little bit more with Brentford, and maybe even the first game in game week 33. We might also see some more rotation. But Arsenal's defence is still really good. Against Everton, if you take away the penalty, it was like 0.4 XGC. They are a team that just don't concede many chances. It does mean that Raya doesn't make many saves, but I guess what I'm saying is he's not a bad goalkeeper to have. It gives me some Arsenal defensive coverage with Gabriel on the bench. So no huge concerns there with Raya. Gvardiol versus Konsa is a discussion. Maybe a discussion we'll make nearer to the time. Man City are the early kickoff, and we'll discuss this in a second with Phil Foden, but because they're the early kickoff, we might get a leak as to whether Gvardiol starts or not. I would expect him to. There are 2 ways to look at this. I think that Gvardiol is a slightly better pick this week, because I think he's more attacking than Konsa. He's better for bonus, and he's playing at home. But Konsa's playing against Southampton, and I've got Sarr, Mateta, and Munoz in my team, obviously of Crystal Palace. So maybe I just back Crystal Palace to score in that game and bench Gvardiol and then try and start Konsa instead. So there is a decision to be made there. And of course, my other defender is Gabriel, out for the season, but I just don't think I need to sell him this week because I'm not bench boosting. It did briefly cross my mind. I could sell Gabriel and Areola for, I don't know, Milenkovic and Verbruggen or something like that and bench boost this week. But because I've got issues with like Saka's expected minutes and Foden's expected minutes and maybe a knock there, I just don't know that I need to. And I would be using 2 transfers then still to then bench boost in a single week where I wasn't planning it. I don't think it's necessarily much better than my bench boost in 33. And in 33, because loads of players are playing twice, I think there's less risk normally associated with a bench boost. So I think I still want a bench boost in 33. So yeah, I don't think I'm going to sell Gabriel this week, essentially. So defensively, I think I'm set up okay. The only way I wouldn't be is if I pick up 1 or 2 more injuries and then I have to start dealing with that. In the midfield, obviously Murphy's fine as long as he doesn't have an issue on Monday. Sarr is absolutely fine. I would prefer to have Eberechi Eze, but Sarr will absolutely do the job in the double. Salah, not in a great run of form, is he? I did speak about going into game week 31. I'll have to look at what the updated figures are, but he was 41st for non-penalty expected goal involvement in the Premier League over the last 10 game weeks. 41st. I discussed the likes of Abdoulaye Doucouré, Kevin Schade, Onuachu. All of these players had higher non-penalty expected goal involvement than Salah going into game week 31. And he's just not in a good run of form. Do I want to sell Salah? No, absolutely not. But I do think if you're in a position where selling Salah would allow you to build a really strong squad and that's your only way to do it, he's not playing overly well at the moment. Or at least from an FPL perspective, he's not getting as many clear-cut chances. So Salah against West Ham's fine. I'm certainly not captaining him because he's not got a double. The only spot in my midfield that's obviously a big decision for me, let's say that Phil Foden is fit, and again, apparently he limped off down the tunnel, so maybe he won't be, is do I start Saka or Foden? I don't think potentially either start, right? So Saka's minutes are a lot lower than I expected them to be. If he gets 75, 80 minutes plus against Real Madrid, and that leg is still tight going into the second leg, I could imagine that Saka doesn't play against Brentford, or at least doesn't start. Is he going to start Real Madrid, start Brentford, start Real Madrid? This is, again, probably a mistake going from the wildcard. I probably should have started with someone like Palmer. And whilst he has outscored Palmer, I'm not focusing on the outcome here. I'm focusing on the decision-making process. And I feel like it might have been a slight mistake going for Bukayo Saka. If I don't think Saka starts, I could, of course, start Foden or Konsa. The good thing with Foden is, like I said, Man City are the early kickoff, and we do often get early team news for Manchester City. So if I think we're going to get early team news, what I'll probably do is keep it with Saka in the starting 11 like this, and just on the deadline stream, make a last-minute decision as to whether I bring Foden in based on whether we get a leak. If we got a leak that Foden started, I'd probably start him ahead of Bukayo Saka. But this is a decision I don't really need to make now. Let's see how many minutes Bukayo Saka gets against Real Madrid. But that is not a good position to be in. I thought Saka and Foden would be great. Now I'm looking at it and thinking, I don't really want either for Game Week 32. So yeah, not ideal, but we'll see how it goes. And then the front three looks pretty good, right? I've got Isak currently as my captain. Again, let's assess how many minutes he gets on Monday and whether he looks fit or not. And then Mateta also. And then the final forward is Marmoush. I was thinking I might have a benching headache between Marmoush, Saka, Foden. Marmoush is probably on pens, takes some set pieces as well, and he looks the most secure out of those City attackers to start most games. It's honestly a pretty good team. I feel very pessimistic because it's not gone particularly well across the last two. But to have 3 Newcastle, 3 Palace, 2 City with a home game, 2 Arsenal with a home game, and Mohamed Salah, it's really decent. Like, all of my players that don't double this week all have home games. And I do have a bit of bench cover with Phil Foden and Ezri Konsa. The concern will be, like I said, if I pick up a few knocks and issues with the European games and anything else happens with my Newcastle players, it could quite quickly unravel into a pretty rough game week. But that's the team as things stand. In terms of transfers then, if Phil Foden was fully ruled out, let's say he has picked up an injury, or we know for a fact that Phil Foden doesn't start, let's say we get a league, I do have the option of also just selling Phil Foden for someone this week and starting them ahead of Bukayo Saka. I'll discuss the options I'm looking at, but maybe even like an Aston Villa midfielder like Morgan Rogers. Again, around the PSG ties, I don't even know that Morgan Rogers starts, but it's against Southampton. So something like Foden to Rogers and start Rogers ahead of Saka, that's an option for me. And the other option I have in terms of selling a player is just bringing forward my transfer of selling Gabriel to Game Week 32. That would give me one further option on the bench if I was concerned about squad depth. And it's a transfer I would need to make anyway. It's just, do I need to bring that forward? I've already got Ezri Konsa on the bench. Hopefully I have Phil Foden as backup. Do I need a third player on the bench? That will depend on what happens midweek. So I think that's everything covered, really. Captaincy, I think, is going to be on Isak unless he's a major doubt. If Isak is a major doubt, we've got a real decision to be made. I think it would be Jean-Philippe Mateta. And I think if I had Ezri Konsa, Eberechi Eze, I would be tempted to captain Eze as well. But Mateta on penalties, his minutes, I think, are continuing to go up slightly. Very, very slowly. But I think he will probably get at least 140 minutes across the double game week. He's also an option. I just don't like the fixtures both being away as much against City and Newcastle as I do the home games for Alexander Isak. So, that's the team. Major decisions this week can be held off for a little bit, but let's now discuss my watch list. And also, I'm going to look ahead to my bench boost and free hit at the end of the video as well to just show you how I'm set up for the next couple of weeks. So again, just recapping, my strategy is to bench boost in 33 and free hit in 34. Here are the players that I'm currently eyeing up across the next couple of weeks to help me build towards that bench boost and then obviously carry through post free hit 34. So also players that have good fixtures from 35 onwards are quite useful for me. So let's start with the defenders. As of right now, 3 of the 4 defenders that I'm considering, and the ones I'm probably more likely to bring in, are actually single game week players. The reason for that, I've already got, at the moment, 3 City players, so I can't look at other City defenders, and really, outside Guardiola, they don't really interest me. Crystal Palace, I've already got my 3 Crystal Palace players sorted. Aston Villa, I already have Ezri Konsa, and there are no other defenders that I trust to either start both and also good assets. Like Luca Dean might not start both. Pau Torres, Mings, they're all doubts to start both games, or at least there is enough doubt for me to put me off. And then with Arsenal, again, there are doubts for me. Does Timber definitely start both? I don't know, with Ben White back now. Calafiori back soon too. Kivior, I don't think is nailed on to start both, in my opinion. That could be wrong. And so it's Saliba. But with Saliba, he's more money than Gabriel in terms of my selling price. I can sell Gabriel for 6.2. Saliba is 6.4. I'm already tight on funds. I've got nothing in the bank, so I would have to upgrade Gabriel to Saliba. I love the Arsenal defence. They're fantastic. But are they that good that I want to spend extra money getting from Gabriel to Saliba when I might also need the money elsewhere? I look at the fixtures at the back end of the season for Arsenal. I'm not saying they are bad, but they are not standout supreme fixtures where I really see lots of clean sheets. So what that leaves me with then, if I'm not that interested in Villa, Crystal Palace, City or Arsenal defenders, is only single game week players. So West Ham stand out. I've already got Areola, but the likes of Kilman and Wan-Bissaka look like they could be options. Kilman's only 4.3 million and starts every game. He is quite a tall guy. Could get a cheeky header, you never know. Konate, obviously, against Leicester. He did get subbed off for Bradley in the Liverpool game today. I didn't see any injury news there, but Bradley could even be an option if we think he starts against Leicester. He got an assist after coming off the bench. So basically a Liverpool defender's an option. I would put Van Dijk here, but it's a similar thing, as I said, to Saliba. If I'm spending all that money on Van Dijk, I would probably at that stage just go for Saliba instead. And then, don't laugh, just got a clean sheet against City. I really do like Dorgu. Dorgu, if you're a Man United fan or you watch us a lot, Dorgu is so attacking. His numbers support that. The eye test supports that. And he seems to be pretty nailed on as the left wing back, mainly because he is our only existing wing back. So if I think he starts, Wolves at home is a good game. Dorgu does interest me. And I actually don't mind the fixtures at the back end of the season for United. We're just not a very good defence is the thing, and I kind of fancy us to concede in pretty much every game. It's not very inspiring, the defensive options, and my big concern is that I've got Gabriel, who is out for the season and I need to sell, and then Dan Burn, who I also probably want to sell because he's got Aston Villa away in the double. So if I need to sell, I need to buy 2 defenders, and they all just don't interest me at all. So I'm probably, at the moment, going to buy 2 of those 4. I might end up just keeping Dan Burn, if none of these inspire me particularly, and just saving the transfer. With regards to midfielders, again, there aren't that many that stand out to me, but with Phil Foden having really low minutes and also apparently limping off as he left the pitch against Manchester United and went down the tunnel, so that's a potential issue. And then also, again, I have Murphy against Villa away in double game week 33. I don't really want a bench boost with both Burn and Murphy. I'd like to at least sell one of them. So if, again, I have to sell maybe Foden and maybe Murphy, I'm looking at maybe 2 midfielders needing to be brought in for me. So in terms of the double game week midfielders I'm interested in, Merino. I might pivot. I might do something like Gabriel to Dorgu, and then I could, of course, do Murphy to Merino, because that would free up my third Arsenal slot. I don't really have a massive opinion on double Arsenal defence versus double Arsenal attack. I don't think there's a huge favourite for me. If you look at the data, double Arsenal defence looks a bit better. And the concern with Merino is he started so many games recently, could be rotated around the Real Madrid tie. And also, he played in midfield in game week 31. So there is a bit of concern there. Could play deeper, could be rotated. And his attacking data isn't that strong. So he's not like a really exciting player to own. Savinho I like. It's just like, he's not nailed either. If Foden were to be injured, I think that increases Savinho's minutes, but you still can't confirm that he starts every game. So if I was selling Foden for Savinho, I'm trading one rotation risk for another. So again, that worries me a little bit, which moves us to the player that has almost perfect minutes this season, which is Morgan Rogers. If there is a game that Morgan Rogers doesn't play, and he might just play all of them, it is Southampton. So you would think that if I would look maybe for 33, he might and probably should play both in the double against Newcastle and City. The game that you would expect him to get a bit of a rest would be the Southampton one. And I don't think I need a midfielder this week. So I almost hope, and I'm sorry if you own Rodgers, but I almost hope that Rodgers doesn't start against Southampton and gets his rest there. If Rodgers starts PSG, Southampton, PSG, he's either a genuine robot that just doesn't need a rest, or there is then concern for the double. I've not put Rodgers and Asensio here because I truly don't trust that either of those start in the double game week. Both of them anyway. They could do, but I don't trust that. And even when they start, they only get like 60 minutes. So those are the 3 doublers that aren't, again, that exciting or confirmed to get the best minutes. 2 players that I do love, both with good games at home in the double, are Bowen and Bruno. They're on set pieces. Bowen's on penalties if Paquetá's not on the pitch. Bruno, we know, is on penalties. Again, Wolves and Southampton at home in double 33. Both West Ham and United have pretty decent fixtures after game week 34 too. So they are players that I could hold for the remainder of the season, and that you just know that they're going to play every single week. So I almost wonder if I were to sell someone like a Phil Foden to free up a bit of funds, and also because he was injured or I didn't want to take a risk, Bowen and Bruno might be better options than trying to chase these doubles. And again, it would give me decent fixtures for the back end of the season. So those are the 5 midfielders that I'm currently considering. Merino, Savinho, Rodgers, Bowen, Bruno. Forwards-wise, I'm very happy with my forwards. I think Mateta, in particular, obviously double-double. Isak, I'm not too displeased with the idea of keeping Isak for the double in 33. I know it's Villa away, and I know I said I ideally don't want Murphy and Burn, but Isak is sensational if he's fit. So I don't mind the idea of keeping Isak, maybe even including him as part of my bench boost. However, Isak to Watkins is something that I have eyed up quite a lot. I just don't know that Watkins definitely starts both in the double. Rashford's played very well as the 9 in the minutes that he's got there. And we've seen recently that Emery is very happy to rotate Watkins. His minutes haven't been good. Even when he started, he's not getting 90 on a consistent basis. And then the other forward being Marmoush. I'm very happy to have Marmoush for the double game week. So I don't need to sell any of my forwards. But if I am to, Watkins and then maybe Even Ilson. The issue with Even Ilson is he doesn't double in 33. So I'm bringing in a player that, it's not got an awful fixture per se, but it's not necessarily a brilliant player to bring in for a double game week when there are other options that I could target. I honestly don't really want to buy anyone on this list. There is not a single player here where I'm super excited. It's the first time ever I didn't even know who to put on my transfer plans thumbnail. I'm like, I don't want any of them. I don't desperately. Rodgers is probably the closest because he's got a really nice double. He's a cheap price and he's been returning recently, but none of these players excite me. So I'm going to need to transfer in at least 3 of them, maybe 4 of them. Let's now go over to Fantasy Football Hub, take a look at my possible bench boost and the transfers that I might make in Game Week 33. So guys, I've just jumped over to Fantasy Football Hub to do a little bit of planning ahead. And as always, if you do want to get access to Hub for the back end of the season and also ahead of next season as well, do check out the link down below. You can get 30% off and there are plenty of features that you can try out for free as well. So let's go on the basis that everything goes perfectly smoothly and I don't need a transfer in 32. There are going to be a lot of ifs, buts and maybes here. I've got a doubts over Foden. I've got Isak, who I don't know is definitely fully fit. I'm worried about Foden and Saka's minutes regardless. So there is, again, a lot that can happen. And we have the European games midweek. But let's go on the basis that approaching Game Week 33, I don't have any additional issues to sort out. You can see here that I actually currently have, if you include Gabriel, 10 doublers, but not including Gabriel, I've got 9 double game week players. So I've got Raya in goal, Crystal Palace in Ipswich. I've Gvardiol, Munoz and Konsa all with doubles. 3 of my midfielders have doubles in Sarr, Saka, Foden. And then 2 of my front 3, Mateta, Marmoush. My single game week players at the moment are Salah and Isak. If I don't make a transfer in 32, that means going into double game week 33, I will have 2 free transfers. Sorry, that's a lie. 3 free transfers for double game week 33. As of right now, that means my bench boost, incredibly stinky looking, is Areola against Southampton at home, Jacob Murphy and Burn against Aston Villa away, and then an injured Gabriel. So, if Foden was okay, right? So let's go first on the basis that Phil Foden is okay, and I think he will get some minutes in the double, and I don't need to transfer him out. And let's also assume that Alexander Isak is okay, and he's a player that I don't need to transfer out. What I am then looking at is I can use all 3 of my transfers on Gabriel, Burn, and Murphy, take them out, and make it a good bench boost. So let's go through that, what that would look like. Murphy, I want to replace with Rodgers, I think, in an ideal world. I'll see what minutes happen. I'll see what injuries happen for Aston Villa as well, and how they get on against PSG. But just based on minutes, and also a bit of output, I think Rodgers is the guy that I would want the most. Okay, so Rodgers is the first one. Then that gives me 0.5 in the bank that I need to find. But that doesn't matter too much because Gabriel, I can downgrade. This is why I'm not as interested, sadly, in Saliba. Because if I did Gabriel to Saliba, I can't then find a replacement for Burn without also downgrading someone else. So what I was looking at, as boring as it is Gabriel to Dorgu. Maybe it is Man United bias, by the way. I don't really care. There aren't that many options that are that interesting anyway. And then for Dan Burn, I'd have 1.1 in the bank. So for Dan Burn, I could go anywhere up to 5.5 million or 5.6 million, I think it is. So I think I'm looking at probably Wan-Bissaka or Kilman. I mean, that's so boring, isn't it? I just don't think there's anyone that massive. Like, I could take a risk on another Aston Villa defender, right? Because I've got Konsa and Rodgers. If I'm not doing the Isak to Watkins move, which in this case I'm suggesting I'm not, then I could potentially just go and get like a Luka Dean and take a risk, or go for one of the other centre-backs, or Matty Cash, or whoever I think will play good minutes. I've already got my 3 Aston Villa here. I've already got my 3 Crystal Palace. I could take a risk on... Timber's too expensive, isn't he? Yeah, he's 5.6. So I could take a risk on Kivior at this stage if I wanted to. Like, Fantasy Football Hub have him at 10.7 projected points in that double. That's massive. That seems extremely high, by the way, but I guess that's on the basis that he starts both games. That could be an option. I'm going to say for now that I don't trust that and that I'm going to go for someone like Kilman. That would leave the bench boost being Areola and Kilman against Southampton, Rodgers with a double and Dorgu, but I would probably end up starting Rodgers ahead of Isak. Is that good? Is that a decent bench boost? Would you let me know if you do anything differently? The other option is, if I just feel like Burn to Kilman that's just not worth the money, the other option I have is then selling Isak to Watkins. So still doing Rodgers and Dorgu, or Rodgers and Kilman, but then leaving Burn on the bench and just saying, I don't think there are many defenders that are that much better than Dan Burn, and then just bringing in Watkins for Isak. What that would leave me with is 10 double game week players in the starting 11 and Salah with Rodgers on the bench. Now, this is up for debate as to what you would actually do in this case, but you might even say at that stage, start all 11 of your doublers and Salah is part of your bench boost, which given the way he's playing, potentially, but he has got Leicester. So technically, that would leave my bench boost looking something like Areola, Salah, Burn, Dorgu. It's not fantastic, but it's not terrible. And again, it's absolutely fine if you'd rather say Rodgers being on the bench boost. So it's 11 doublers. I think that's about as good as I can get. Now, where this becomes unstuck is if Foden is a major doubt or an issue, if Saka's minutes at this point are still really low, or I encounter other issues, I might be looking at a bench boost that includes both Jacob Murphy and Burn, right? Or I might have to take a -4 hit. I don't mind taking a -4 hit for a decent bench boost. I'm not taking -8 and above. So if I get to game week 33 and I have to take a -8 to field a good bench boost, I've got two options there. I filled a suboptimal bench boost with just a -4 and just accept that it's not great, or I delay the bench boost and hope that between game week 35 and 38, a better opportunity arises. If I make that set of transfers, let's go to game week 34, you can see immediately why this becomes an issue, because even if I slap Dorgu in, I've got Areola, Burn, Dorgu, Salah. That's it. Right, so my team for 34, but I know this. This is why I was planning to free hit in 34. Then in 35, this is the team that I would come back to. So you can see lots of players playing at home. In fact, all apart from Salah playing at home. Not necessarily the best set of fixtures, but certainly after a free hit coming back to this, I wouldn't hate this as a team. If we then skip ahead to 36, these are the projected doublers, courtesy of Ben Crellin, but some of these are much less likely to double. For example, you can see Areola is here, but he's only got like a 20% chance of doubling. So not all of these players would double, but there is a good chance in particular that Aston Villa, as you can see here, a 48% chance, and Man City, who Ben Crellin currently has at a 64% chance, Aston Villa and City in particular have a very good chance of doubling. So a lot of these players that I have, if I was to have Konsa, Rodgers, Watkins, Foden, Marmoush, Guardiola, they would also have a chance of doubling in 36. What that does mean is all of those teams that double in 36 would blank in 37. So I might be looking at a case in game week 37 when my team is a bit of a disaster. And then 38, a lot of my players have good fixtures, but I've also got like triple Palace against Liverpool. So sadly, we can't really plan for 36 onwards right now. I think we can plan up to about game week 35. But really, considering I'm free hitting in 34, we're just planning across these next 2 weeks. Game week 32, game week 33. I ideally would like to not use a transfer 32, use all three of them in 33 to build a team similar-ish to this. It will be a certain set of transfers depending upon injuries. Free hit in 34. And like I said, ideally, coming out of game week 34, going into 35, I'd like to be approaching the top 10k. It's a bold ask because there's assistant managers in plays and triple captains, but with the bench boost and the free hit, I need to be in a good position. Otherwise, there's no chance in the back end. So that's the team. That's the set of plans. Sorry, I can't be a little bit more concrete, but we are just awaiting so much info and so much can change. Let me know what you think of that plan. Let me know which combination you prefer for the bench boost, and if you think this is a decent enough bench boost to play the chip, and let me know what your plans are as well. So guys, that was a bit of a rambly video, but just talking about some of my early thoughts, things that are currently going on in my brain ahead of game week 32 and beyond. And if you did enjoy this video, please do smash that like button and make sure to subscribe as well. There will be an episode of FPL Therapy on Tuesday morning with the one and only FPL Harry. So if you enjoy my content and you enjoy Harry's content, my new podcast for this season, FPL Therapy, there'll be an episode on Tuesday morning between Harry and I where we'll talk through some of the stuff coming up. So make sure to just search for FPL Therapy on YouTube, Spotify, Apple. Check out that episode, and then we'll be back on YouTube on Wednesday morning. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.